In the last video, we set up our Web3 instance along with the HD wallet provider. Now we're on to our very last step, which is to use this instance to actually deploy our contract. Now, the first thing I want to talk about regarding deployment of the contract is that our code is going to look remarkably similar to what we did a little bit ago inside of our before each helper of our inbox test file. So we're going to get a list of accounts out of our Web3 instance, just like we did before. We'll then create a new instance of our contract by using the Web3 contract constructor. We'll call deploy on it and call send on it as well. So essentially almost identical. Now there is one kind of interesting little thing that I'm going to do here. Because we need to make two asynchronous calls. First, we need to do one to attempt to get a list of our accounts that we have access to, and then a second call to create and deploy that contract. We've got two pieces of asynchronous code. Rather than interfacing with those as though they were a promise, I would still like to use the async await syntax. However, we cannot use the await syntax outside of a function, which is what we're doing right now. So we're going to just arbitrarily decide to write a function, and the only reason we're doing this is so we can use the async await syntax. So I'm going to make a function called deploy. I'm going to mark it async, and then immediately after that, we will call deploy. So there is no reason for making this function outside of giving us the ability to use the async await syntax. We could just as easily not write our deployment script inside this function, but then we would not be able to use async await. So again, just a little helper to make our lives a little easier. Now inside this function, we're going to do two steps, exact same steps that we just did inside of our test helper file. We're first going to get a list of all the accounts that have been unlocked through our wallet provider right here. So we'll say const accounts equals await web3.eth.get accounts, like so. Remember that I had said just a moment ago that the mnemonic contains not only our public key but also our private key. But as we saw much earlier when we spoke about mnemonics, a single mnemonic can be used to generate many different accounts. And so the reason that we're getting a list of our accounts right here is that the mnemonic is not specifying just one account. It can be used to generate many accounts. And so we're just going to decide to take the first account out of this list of accounts right here and use that as the basis for deploying our contract. And just to make sure that's really clear, let's add in a console log so we can specify the public key, or excuse me, the address of the account that is deploying the contract. So we'll do a console log with attempting to deploy from account, and then we'll list out the account that is going to be doing the deployment or paying for the deployment. And so I'll say accounts at 0, like so. Then underneath this console log, we can write out our actual contract deployment statement. So this is going to be almost identical to what we just saw a moment ago inside of our test helper. So we'll say await new web3, and notice here that we're using the lowercase web3. This is the instance of web3 that has been configured properly to connect to the Rinkeby network. We're going to access the Ethereum module inside the web3 instance. We'll make a new contract, and into that we will provide our ABI. Just as before, our ABI is coming into this file as JSON, but we need to pass in an actual JavaScript object. So we're going to use json.parse on the interface. And remember, this interface right here is the ABI. Then on the line after that, we'll say deploy. The deploy statement right here is going to contain the contract's bytecode and any initial arguments that we want to pass to that contract. So we'll say data is bytecode, which we had already required into this file, and then arguments, which is going to be an array that contains all the initial arguments for our contract. So this will be the initial value or the initial message that we want to publish inside of our inbox contract. So I'll say, hi there, why not? And then finally, on the line underneath that, we need to actually send this transaction to the network. So we'll say .send. I'll specify some initial gas to use. We're going to specify 1 million, just as we did before. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, And remember, I only put the commas in here just to make sure it's really clear to you. Yeah, I'm definitely doing 1 million gas. So I'm going to delete those commas. And then finally, we'll say which account this is going to be deployed from. So from accounts at 0. We are just assuming that the first account in this list is going to be the account that is used to deploy our contract. All right, now that's just about it. The last thing that I want to do here is wait for the contract to be deployed. And once it is, I want to do one last console log underneath this. And I want to console log out the address that our contract was deployed to on the Rinkeby network. Remember, if we don't record that address, to you and me, it's kind of a mystery as to where our contract just got deployed. We deployed it somewhere, but we don't know where it got deployed to. So we need to at least print out or somehow record the address that our contract ended up at. So we're going to assign the result to this right here to, how about just a variable called result? I think that's simple enough. So result is going to be an instance of our contract, and underneath that, we'll just console log out the address. So I'll say something like contract deployed to, and then the actual address, which you will recall is available on result.options.address, like so. All right, so we wrote a pretty good amount of code in this video. Let's finish up by deploying our contract. It does take some amount of time to deploy, so I think we can deploy it right now and then continue in the next video and just kind of observe what happened and also look at some interesting things about the deployment process. So back at my terminal over here, I'm going to run node deploy.js. And we'll see if we made a mistake or need to fix any typos or anything like that. So it's definitely going to take a moment to start up because we have to wait for that initial compilation. All right, so here we go. I see attempting to deploy from account so-and-so. And then like I said, it's going to take a little bit of time for this to actually be deployed. Remember, we are now on the Rinkeby test network, and it takes some amount of time for these transactions to occur. So let's pause the video right now. We're going to come back to the next video, and we're going to see what happens after we wait a significant amount of time. So I'll catch you in just a minute.